Hi, everybody. This is John Farian. I am here with Kyle. How's it going today, Kyle?
Pretty good, John. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks to the Live Large Universe show. We sometimes call it a podcast. It's a Facebook Live show, but we're all about snowmobile safety, education, positive growth of the sport. And what I try to remind everybody what Live Large is. If you see Live Large anywhere on hats, shirts, on the bottom of the show here, what I tell everybody is it's live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others. You think you're on board with that program? I know you are.
I think that sounds good. Yeah, sounds good to me.
Very good, very good. So as everybody starts to come in here tonight, please jump into the comments and let us know where you're watching from. So we got live viewers just starting to stream in now. So thank you all who are watching. Go in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. Are you from Nevada? Are you from California? Are you from Maine? Are you from Montana? I don't know. Where are you from? Let us know in the comments. And as you do that, also, please consider sharing the show because if you share the show, I'm going to get you in to win this backcountry first aid kit from Mountain Lab. So Mountain Lab is one of our show sponsors. They're part of Mountain Sports Distribution out of Canada. Again, Mountain Lab products are awesome. I've got an entire tunnel bag full of Mountain Lab products. Everything from flashlights to first aid kits to you name it. It's like just about anything you need for your backcountry, tunnel bag. And from there, if you guys share it out, we'll get you in to win on that. I appreciate it very much. So, Kyle, let's get people in here one more time. Just jump in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. There's this guy, though, like watching right now. His name, have you ever heard of this Joe Gill character? Like, oh my gosh. You know
The,
what's really
the, the living legend himself.
what's really embarrassing, and Joe, I know you're a good guy and you're going to be here busting our chops all night. So let me just take a moment to bust Joe's chops for 1 minute and then we'll get on with the show. So I get a message from Joe today, who, by the way, if you guys don't know, Joe's been on my show. Like, he's been on my show. He's been a guest on my show at least once, maybe a couple of times. I can't remember if it's been more than once. But he sends me a message today and he goes like, "Hey, John, how do I watch the show tonight? I've never watched one of your episodes." By the way, I've been doing the show for 6 years, and Joe's been on my show, and he voluntarily told me he's never watched an episode. So, Joe, thanks for watching the very first episode. We've got an amazing guest here with Kyle. See, we got to bust his chops, right? That's what we're doing.
Well, I appreciate him coming out and supporting me. That
I
sounds like
know.
my buddy Joe.
Nope,
Yeah, that
exactly,
sounds like
exactly.
Joe.
All right, everybody who's here in the comments, just let us know where you're watching from. We appreciate you doing that. And the question of the night is, Nevada. When I think of Nevada, I think of deserts. I think of cactus. I think of cowboys. Like, I even brought my cowboy hat here tonight with me, but I couldn't get it to work with the headphones. It just doesn't sit there well with the headphones on. So I'm gonna take it off. But when like, do you even snowmobile? Can you? Let's start the show off with that question. Can you snowmobile in Nevada?
Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
We have. I
Show's
would
done,
say.
folks. Joe, we're wrapped
Yeah.
it up. Like,
Yeah.
show's
Wrap
done.
it
We're,
up.
yeah. We've got a lot more to talk about. So yeah, let's just get to introduce you here, and then we're going to talk all about
Sure.
snowmobiling in Nevada and all the cool things that are part of it. Because I don't think I have yet. I've literally snowmobiled across the border from Nevada. I might have snuck over to Nevada at one point, crossing the border right there on that Canada, California and Nevada border over on the west side over there. But let's start out with just getting to know you a little bit, Kyle. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, my name's Kyle Wieben. I owner Sled Nevada, longtime snowmobiler, backcountry enthusiast. I started snowmobiling when I was about 16 years old. Had a friend of mine. He asked me one day, I was really into dirt bikes and everything. I thought dirt bikes were king. And he asked me if I wanted to go snowmobiling, and he put me on a Polaris 500 EFI. I don't know if anybody remembers the old, wedge chassis, but that
Oh
was
yeah,
my first experience backcountry. And
very
I
nice.
think the second ride I went on with him, I ended up totaling his sled into a tree. And so, from that point on, it was kind of, I was hooked.
Yep, yep.
I have 5 kids, 4 bonus kids, and 5 kids that are my bio kids. I have a wonderful girlfriend, Samantha. We live right in Elko. I've been in Elko for 11 years now, and I have enjoyed every minute of snowmobiling in Nevada. And a lot of the reason that I started my business was because of how great the snowmobiling in Nevada was, and I am super passionate about snowmobiling, and then I just couldn't believe the quality of riding that we have here compared to other places. And growing up in Idaho, it's like, man, you go ride Jefferson's, you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and
Yeah.
you have to trailer, an hour and a half, depending on how far away you live. You're an hour and a half, 2 hour trailer ride, and then you get there and there's no parking,
Yep. Yep.
and you're still, a 6 mile ride in on a whooped out trail and all of that. And I get here, and it was just like almost another world. I reached out on a Facebook page, Elko Lamoille Sledheads,
Yep.
and said, "Hey, I'm new to the area, want to go riding," and kind of the rest was history. Joe Gill reached out and said, "Hey, I'm riding Monday and Tuesday if you want to hook up with me," and
Yep.
we've been friends ever since. So
Very cool. Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean Nevada, awesome. And so we've got, like I said, you guys in that Elko area, and then over in the Reno area, there's riding up on the California side of the border as well
Mhm.
too. So yeah, absolutely, everybody. Just so you know, there's riding in Nevada. So it's not just all cactuses and desert, right?
Well, and it's funny because Nevada is actually called the Mountain State. That's
Yeah.
one of the nicknames for Nevada, that people don't associate Nevada with mountains. It's
Yeah.
cactuses and casinos and brothels, and we have all of that too. But man, we got a whole bunch of mountain ranges that are just,
That's awesome.
on par with almost everywhere else I've ever rode. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, kind of through that intro, you gave us a little bit of insight on, yes, you can ride in Nevada, and you've given us a taste of, what it's like riding there. But let's dive into that part a little bit deeper now. And can you break the state into like areas for us, right? Like, if you were to ride, you break it down. I'm just going to make it up. I'll say like east
Sure.
versus west, maybe north versus south. But like break it into maybe regions that you can ride in Nevada, and some of the things people could expect for riding zones by zone there.
So I would say like the biggest two zones, you have the west side, which is like the Reno Tahoe area,
Yep.
and then you have the east side, which is going to be like Elko County, right?
Okay.
And there's little mountain ranges that you can ride if you're super adventurous. Like we talked about Joe earlier. Joe and I, our favorite thing is to go find new riding zones and be like, oh, I was driving down to such and such a place the other day, and I saw this mountain range. They had snow. We should plan a trip down there. Well, Joe actually does that, and he'll go down and he'll hit all these remote, obscure spots. But I would say the main riding areas is Elko County, and then the
Okay.
west side, the Reno Tahoe area. The biggest difference that you're going to see between the two zones is the west side is pretty regulated. They
Yep.
have a lot of restriction. They have I've personally never ridden on the California side, but it's really restricted. There's only certain areas you can ride in,
Yep.
and then on the east side where we're at, outside of the wilderness area, it's kind of just open season,
The Wild
and
West,
so
right?
that the Wild West, yeah, and that's what it is too. It's like we don't have parking lots, we don't have trail systems. You have to know the unload spot and then the road in to
Yeah.
get to the riding zone that you're going to go to. But
Yeah.
um, that's probably the two main areas. You're going to see a lot more snowmobilers on the west side than the east side.
Okay.
Um, Here in Elko, we call it the crown jewel is Lamoille Canyon, and that's where I would say 95% of the people that
Gotcha.
ride in Elko. They'll go up the canyon, they go ride, and they come home. It's only 20 minutes outside of Elko, so it's kind of
Yeah.
nice and convenient that way. I like to ride up north in the Independence Range, and then any other little mountain range that Joe and I find tantalizing and try to make a trip out of it. But that's kind of the main zones that are reliable to ride in
Yeah.
Nevada. Last year there was the snowpocalypse that happened, and
Very cool.
I think there was guys down by Vegas riding on Mount Charleston, which you
Wow.
just don't see on a
Yeah.
regular season. But
That's crazy.
yeah, Nevada's pretty open. There's not a lot of regulation. There's not a lot of patrolling. It's just
Yeah.
like you say, the Wild West.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy to think. I mean, like I'm from Minnesota originally. You're from Idaho, it sounds like. And
Mm-hmm.
when you live in the north, you associate the north with winter, right? And like when I'm in
Right.
Minnesota, you don't get a lot of elevation change, so you pretty much live in the winter. You can ride in the winter, and it's winter, right? Get to
Mm-hmm.
Washington here. I live at 400 feet of elevation, and it almost never snows at my house. Maybe once or twice a year, I get a few inches here and there. But I can go drive an hour away and get up in elevation, and now I can ride. But when you get down to these southern states, like I'll give an example, is like literally just 2, 3, I think it was 3 weeks ago, I was in southern Utah in Moab, and I was jeeping. It was
Mm-hmm.
70, 80 degrees out. but off in the distance I could see snow-capped mountains all around me, and it was
Right.
crazy. I actually, on our radios, we run, different channels, and one of the channels we were on, we were picking up, we could tell they were talking about snowmobiling. People were snowmobiling across the way, and we could get their signal on the radios, and it
Hmm.
was just awesome to be here in a Jeep doing, 70 whatever, 70 degrees and outside, up in the upper elevations. We're probably sitting at 6,000 feet roughly, and they must be riding 8, 9, 10,000 feet of elevation. It's got to be where they're at.
Right.
And speaking of elevation, like, talk about the east side where you guys ride. What is kind of the unload elevation, and then what are the elevations you go up to when you're riding?
So a typical year, you're unloading at 7,000, sixty
Wow.
five hundred to 7,000 feet.
Yeah.
Elko itself is like right at like 5,600 feet. And so we're pretty high elevation just to begin with. And then we'll ride, I would say you'll ride 7,500 to 9,000 is going to be kind of your regular riding
Yeah.
area. If you do a big climb and climb up out of a chute, you can get up over 10,000 feet. But it's typically at 7,500 to 9,000 feet, which is another nice thing is we don't have this crazy spread of elevation gain. So you set your sled up, you clutch your sled for 7,500 to
Yeah.
9,000,
And it
and it's
runs.
going to
Yeah.
run great all day, every day.
Yeah, that's one of those things in Washington here you absolutely have to deal with is the elevation
Mhm.
changes, because
Oh yeah,
there's one trip I might be unloading at, say, 2,200 feet of elevation, and I might that day be riding 4 to 5,000 feet of elevation most of the time. But then I go up to a
right.
place like Mount Baker, and it's crazy because you can literally unload your snowmobile at 1,500 to 2,000 feet, and
Right.
you can legitimately ride to 10,000 feet on the same mountain. It's this
Yeah.
big giant volcano up here that you can get on, and your sled definitely runs different at 8, 9, 10,000 feet than it will down at 3, 4, 5,000 feet. So
Right. And I'm sure like with the newer sleds, it's probably not as much of a problem as it used to be, but you could be jetting your sled three times
yeah,
on a when you have a spread like that of
yeah,
elevation
the old
change.
school, yeah,
Yeah, but
yep,
here it's pretty good. You get your sled set up and it's
yeah,
gonna run pretty good most places. You're not
yeah,
gonna really have to tinker with it too much. Sometimes you change it for the snowpack, but
very
other
good,
than that, it's gonna run pretty good. And that was the other thing. The point I was gonna make about east versus west is,
yeah, yeah,
the west side they have that maritime snowpack,
yep,
Sierra Cement. We get that here, but a lot of what we get is we get the continental snowpack too, and
yeah,
that makes
lighter,
Elko kind of,
yeah,
yeah, a little lighter, fluffier, drier snow, and it can make it really challenging when you're trying to forecast avalanche conditions,
yeah,
because you look at the forecast center over at this from Sierra Avalanche Center,
yeah,
and you look at the Utah Avalanche Center, and they're both saying different things, and they could
and you're
both
in the
be
middle
completely
somewhere, right?
red,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we're in the middle and we're stable, snow's good, we're having a good time, or they could be stable
yeah,
and conditions are sketchy out here, and so it's
yeah,
something that is a problem that we're kind of working on trying to get solved. But that's kind of the other big thing is we get hit with both sides of the snowpack. A lot of the places that people were riding this year in the West were super low snow.
yeah.
We had a great snow year. I think we were 155% of normal.
That's awesome.
So Elko's kind of a weird. We're right in between these two kind of snowpack condition areas
Yeah,
that we really benefit from that most
yep,
of the time.
nope, that's awesome. Tell me a little bit about Sled NV. Like, where did that name come from? When did it start? Tell us a little bit about what it is, and then we'll get into your guiding and whatnot. So,
So Sled NV, it started with, and I'm not saying I'm Chris Brandt as far as my riding ability, but I saw what Chris was doing
yeah,
with BBA, and I was like, that is so awesome. I want to do that. Like that's
yeah,
like my dream someday
yep,
is to, have some kind of a business where I can just take people snowmobiling.
that's
And
awesome. Yep,
I'm my favorite thing to do once I really got into snowmobiling and my skills kind of got honed to the point of where I felt like I could mentor and teach others was I would love to take new riders out and just be like, look how awesome sledding is. Like, isn't this the greatest thing that you've
isn't
ever
that?
done
I
in
mean,
your
that's
life?
my favorite thing too. Is like sharing
Yeah.
such. I mean, this whole idea of like snowmobiling, backcountry snowmobiling is such an amazing experience. And
Yeah.
the desire and the willingness to share it. And like so many other people, it's like they just want to go ride and it's all about them getting their fix. But it takes a
Hmm.
special breed like yourself to be able to be like, I want to show other people how cool this is and give them,
Yeah.
teach them the ropes and bring them along for the ride, right? So,
Yeah. And, I like, that's just something I liked. And so in kind of doing that and enjoying that, I was like, I realized nobody guides in Nevada.
yeah,
I'm as far as I am aware, and I'm talking west and east,
Yeah.
Sled Nevada is the only permitted guide service through the Forest Service in Nevada.
Yeah.
And I saw a need. We started out in 2018. We started working with the Forest Service, and that was a process that took, five
Yeah. Yeah.
years
Anything federal
before we
government.
ever.
Yeah. State
Oh yeah,
government or federal,
and
either one.
the,
Yeah.
the frustrating thing about it for me was they wanted it. They're like, oh, we definitely see a need.
Yeah.
They looked at Sled Nevada as a way to kind of drive some of the usage out of Lamoille Canyon into these other zones, and it worked out for me because these other zones that were great riding, but a little bit further away, like 45 to 50 minutes away as opposed to
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
You know, uh, I rode there anyways because I like fresh snow. I like fresh tracks, and so I'll go where the 1% goes and rides instead of where everybody else goes and rides. It's kind of weird because there's a big sledding community in Elko that I'm not really part of because I don't ride those areas, but that was kind of what started it. And in the beginning, we were just a rental service. We
Yeah.
just would rent sleds to people, and kind of through the just the trial of fire that the U.S. Forest Service is and permitting and all that, and just working with them and building a relationship with them. Last year was our first year that we were able to secure that guide license, and it's been a really good experience for me being able to guide people in the backcountry and show people kind of the ropes. But that was kind of the fire for me as I was watching what Chris Brandt was doing. And I was like, I'm not as good a rider as Chris, but man, I feel like I'm every
Yeah.
bit as impassioned about snowmobiling as he is. And,
Yeah.
and you don't have to be, in my opinion, you don't have to be that level of a rider
Exactly. Yep.
to share, snowmobiling with
Yeah.
people. But
No,
that
I mean
was,
it's more about the 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 mindset, the tone, the ability to teach others. You can be a medium to above average rider, and if you were passionate and you know how to teach, you can bring people from that beginner to that immediate level quickly. And if you can give them the fundamentals, then from there it's just time in the saddle and practice, right? So
right, 100%. And, like we have over the years, I've had anywhere from somebody who'd never been on a snowmobile ever in their entire life
yeah,
to guys that's what they live for, snowmobile, and come out and ride with us. And
yeah, yeah,
And the biggest thing that I've noticed is, when the guys that come out that are rippers, that's like my favorite thing.
yeah,
I love taking guys out that are rippers because then I can bust into the zones that are my personal zones and I can
yeah,
blow
yeah.
people's minds. I had a group of guys come out from Utah last year that, we're super experienced riders, and I won't say their names because you'd know who they are, but they came out and rode with me. And I'm thinking, oh, they're super experienced. So we're going like advanced class today. And we busted into this bowl, and I think there's 12 of them to start with. And when we got to where I wanted to play, there was 5 guys left. Everybody else had turned back, and
I've
I
heard other
get back.
guides. I've heard other guides use the. I'll use the word bleep. I'll say the bleep filter. They call that, right? So
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I can't say on the air what the actual word is, but you can
Yeah,
use your
I, I
imagination.
I know what you mean. It spreads really good, and it's good for your garden, right? But no, it was, and so that in and of itself was an education for me that experience doesn't equate to skill.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's funny because they contacted me that night, and they're like, "Hey, they booked 2 days. They said we're not coming back out."
What?
Yeah, they're like, we're so wore out. They're like, if I have to side hill again, Kyle, like, you
Ah,
know, I don't
that's
think
awesome.
I think that we're gonna let the sled tumble to the bottom of the hill. And so, when I do actually get guys that are just absolute like just rippers, it's
Yeah,
great because, we can go to some zones that you might be one of just 100 people that have ever even been
ever been
into
there.
that area.
Yeah, that's one of
But
my favorite things about backcountry riding is when you get to that spot, you get to that zone on the mountain, and you look around, and you're like, somebody may have never ever been in this exact spot before. Like this is
yeah,
amazing, right? Kind of thing. So
yeah, yeah, I like getting up on top of stuff, and you look out and you're like, like, what are the odds that I'm like one of just a handful of people that has ever looked over this view,
yeah, no, it's amazing. It's
And
such a cool
I
experience.
always tell people it's like the beauty of snowmobiling is that
Yeah,
I can take you places you wouldn't even be able to get in the summertime on foot
yeah,
easily
yeah,
and
yeah.
quickly.
Oh, I
And
bet. Yeah,
so, yeah, no, but
yeah,
yeah, that's kind of where we started and what we enjoy doing. But it's been a grind, going to snow shows in Salt
yeah,
Lake and all that kind of stuff in the beginning that just pumping and pumping. And, I
Yeah.
think we lost money the first 3 years. It was a struggle, and through the years, I've met really great people and
Yeah.
great industry like you, John, that really support us and has been really helpful. But it's definitely been a fight, and if you're not, I would tell people, anybody considering starting your own snowmobile rental guide service, make sure you love it, make sure
Yeah.
you're into it, because it'll take the love out of it quicker than anything for you.
Yeah. Well, I
But
mean, a lot of people know, like, I'm in the middle of a career search right now. Like, I got laid off here about a month or two ago. And, people are, I'm grateful for the people reaching out, but it's like I very consistently were like, oh, John, you should do this, you should do that, something in the industry. And I'm like, I kind of like the idea of just going to work, doing my job, unplugging at the end of the day or on the weekend, and then going and doing what I love doing, right? Like, I love the yin and the
right,
yang of that, and kind of the contrast to corporate professional life, and then go shred in the mountains and live in the backcountry. It's like it's my escape. And if all of a sudden
right,
now, yeah, your work and your job and everything is in the same space as what your escape is, it kind of, like, I mean, you've said it here now and I've heard it before. It's like it changes the dynamic of what it is, what you do, and how you do it. I think
yeah,
for me, it would be the love of teaching and educating people while at the same time having the most amazing office view in the world, right? So the backcountry. So
right. No, and that's I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because it is true. It's
yeah.
like, I mean, and I'll say there's been times that I've been invited to go riding with friends on the weekend that I don't
Yeah.
have clients. And I'm like, man, I spent 3 days riding already, and a lot of it's babysitting and getting
Yeah.
people unstuck and
Yeah. Pulling
and
skis all
stuff.
day,
And
right?
it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, and it's you're like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna sit this one out because I've had enough of it for,
Yeah. Now your
and
idea
that's
of
too
like
bad.
doing something different is like sitting at home and
Mhm.
relaxing, right? Fine.
Yeah, or go play on the side by side or
Yeah.
spend
Yeah.
time with my girlfriend. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is definitely, it changes your outlook on sledding for sure.
Yeah. No,
But
absolutely. Well, very good. So, as a guide and somebody who's brought a lot of people out of all kinds of different skill levels, something we were talking about in kind of pre-show conversations was the idea of, you see a lot of people come in, if you wanted to make it very binary, it's they're either underprepared or overprepared. It's very rare that someone comes with exactly what they need, and how they do it. And I think, let's start with, like, for you yourself, like, as a guide, I can only imagine you have to fall into the classification of being over prepared, because you're not just planning for yourself and your day, you're planning for what could go wrong, whose sleds are there, it could be any brand of sled, so you got to have tools. Talk me through the things that you bring with you in the backcountry on a guide day. And then, once we get through all that, let's go back to, what are some of the things that you see people don't do or don't bring that you think is a big miss that you want to kind of educate the public? This show's all about, safety, training, education. Like, what can we teach people tonight when we're all done with it? But let's start with, what do you bring into the backcountry when you're out guiding? So,
so the number one thing I bring when I could take anybody into the backcountry is my toolkit.
yeah.
That's like, if something breaks,
Snowmobiles
I got to
don't
be able to
break. What
fix
are
it,
you talking about? They're the most
right?
reliable form of transportation ever. Not.
Right. Not, yeah, 100%. And that's, and learning what you need in your toolkit, that changes from brand to brand. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I probably carry a little bit more than a lot of people, but I try to keep it pretty, common sense. I'm not going to carry a 12-inch crescent wrench in my
Yeah.
tunnel bag.
Yeah.
I have every, metric size tool that I can, fit, small wrenches, things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, little socket sets. And I carry as many spare, what I call, consumable parts as I can. So I carry like two brake levers, I carry a tie rod, I carry heim joints, things that I see fail from accidents all the time.
Yeah.
I carry paracord, electrical tape. Um, we have these straps that we used to use when I was an underground gold miner, called Copco straps, that are like I don't even know how you describe them. They're kind of like a zip tie, but
Okay.
made from nylon strap,
Very
and
nice.
those are super, super strong, super beneficial. Um, and then I always over prepare with clothing. That's the thing, I think, that with guiding more than anything, is I carry, two pairs of socks, two pairs of gloves. I carry an underlayer for me that's like a personal, that goes in my backpack, and
Yeah.
then I'll carry like another underlayer, like a mid layer,
Yeah.
and I carry, all that stuff in my tunnel bag, because that's probably the thing I run into the most with clients, especially inexperienced people, is
They don't
they're
dress
not
right.
prepared.
Yeah.
They don't dress right, or the weather changes. We get up there and some crazy storm will roll in and the wind starts blowing
Yeah.
and they get cold.
Yeah.
We had a a family come out this last winter, and it was a complete whiteout. Like, we
Yeah.
were riding some pretty novice terrain, no trees, no rocks, kind of just rolling hills. And this whiteout sets in, and their 10-year-old son is freezing to death on the snowmobile. And I'm like, let's get his feet warmed up. And we pull his boot off, and his foot's soaking wet because he went and jumped in the creek before the ride even
Yeah.
started,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so we got 2 pairs of socks on him, get him warmed up, and get him back home. But
Yeah.
that's probably what I see the most from inexperienced clients is not having enough warm clothing.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, I always try to give, like, I have I carry FXR gear as like rental options, monosuits and things like that,
Yeah.
and the ones that I rent out to people are like the level 7 warm on the warm scale. I wear a level 0 shell, and
Yeah. Yeah.
but for my clients, I want them roasty
Insulated. Yeah.
toasty all day,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's the quickest killer, in the backcountry, is
Well, and
you
people
have
don't
to spend the
realize,
night.
like, I think of like some of the, even for myself, like I carry an extra base layer, extra socks in my backpack as well, a dry layer basically. Like if I'm,
Hmm.
because for me, it's like, if you're riding hard and you're pushing hard, it's really easy to get so sweaty that you just soak through your base layer. And like, I don't care
Yep.
how good your Gore-Tex is or whatever Sympatex or whatever brand you're wearing, like it
Right.
can't wick that much moisture out that fast.
Yeah.
And all it takes is for you to stop, pause, and it's like a lot of times like I don't even like to take a break for lunch, because as soon as I stop moving and I take a break for say more than 20 minutes type of thing, it's like I start getting chilled, and then it's like it's hard to recover
Hmm.
from that. And I remember I've been on some backcountry trips up in like the British Columbia, Revelstoke, Valmont area up north, in Canada, and I literally remember there was one day that I was shredding so hard that I just got so soaked, and we stopped at a warming hut, way back in the backcountry, and I couldn't dry out fast enough, literally, and so I undid all my stuff and put on my new base layer, and I was toasty dry all the way back out, right? So it
Yeah.
makes a big difference. And then you think about it's survival mode. Like if you actually were in an issue where you had to spend the night, having that wet thing, that kid's foot, if you didn't have a way to, fix that frostbite, you can literally lose toes, lose your foot. I've
Mhm.
seen that kind of stuff happen. So
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember as a kid, we used to take bread bags and put them on our
yeah,
feet to keep them dry. Like,
people still
so
do
yeah.
that, because you're right. If you
I,
got like say
I
your
just
boot is totally soaked, now you can go put a
yeah,
dry sock on. You don't want to put your dry socks back in your soaking wet boots, and so I've
exactly.
heard of people still doing that, Ziploc baggies or bread bags or
Duct
something. So
tape the top of them and call it good.
yep, yep,
No, yeah, like, I think that, like, what you're talking about, like with sweating through your base layer and stuff, that's a really good point. Like, I myself have learned over the years, I ride cold.
yeah,
I will shed a layer, so where I like to be slightly chilled all
yeah,
day,
yeah,
and is stopping for lunch. You're gonna hate me if you want to eat lunch.
yeah,
Lunch is for the truck ride home. Like, I
exactly,
might
yeah,
stop and refuel with like I always get a Hershey's almond. That's like
yeah,
my go-to for just like a quick
yeah,
refuel in the middle of the day. Stop, drink some water, drink a Gatorade, drink whatever. Your vitamin water is usually what I bring, but
yeah,
um, then you just keep riding, because if you do stop, you are going to get cold, and your
yeah,
body's going to, your homeostasis is going to change, where you're
yeah,
like, well, I went from like super physical exertion to now I'm like in relax mode. And usually, for me, if I stop and eat a bunch of food, I just want to go back to the truck and take a nap. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's a really good point. Just try to figure out what works for you. If you can't handle riding cold, if you want to be warm, bring another base layer,
yeah,
bring another mid layer, so that you can swap out
yeah,
and have a change of clothes, so that if the temperature does drop or the wind picks up or something, you're not, getting into a situation where you might be looking at like risk of exposure or
yeah,
hypothermia or things like that.
yeah, very
So
good.
yeah, that's a good point.
So Milo Twigstrom here from Minnesota is actually a friend of mine that I've known for quite a few years. He is watching, and he's asking if you have plans to be at Heydays. Are you going to be promoting Sled NV at bigger shows this year, anything like that?
As much as I'd like to, kind of last year, I took a big risk. I went from being an underground gold miner to being completely self-employed, and
Yeah,
putting as much as I could into Sled MV. And so, as far as like just finances go, we just don't
yeah,
have it in the budget for this year.
yeah,
We've got some big things in the work, from some factory support and things like that coming down the line, that we're hoping that
yeah,
will kind of be the launch that we need. But Heydays isn't an option for us currently, and we might not even be able to make it to the Salt Lake show, as much as we like to, as much as
yeah,
we like to support those events.
yeah,
we're trying to go lean and mean
Yeah.
for the next year or
Well,
so.
yeah, I mean, this is an incredible opportunity when you think about it, right? Like, because here's somebody like Milo, who I know Milo. Like, Milo is somebody who he wants to go to a new spot, a new area. He's an adventurist himself. Has the
Right.
truck, has the trailer, has the sleds. He'll load them all up and take a crew out with him. And
Hmm.
he may have never even considered riding in Nevada. And so here you are in front of him tonight, and well as everybody else who's watching. And I think why because here's the thing: is like this as well as I do. It's like there's guides in every state. You can rent sleds. You can do whatever. Like, what is it that makes you unique? What kind of experience can somebody expect if they come out and ride with you? Just give us the lowdown. Kind of like what's your value proposition for why go ride with you and Sled Envy? Why is Kyle the guy?
So like as far as like the experience you're gonna have is phenomenal.
Yeah,
That's the feedback I get from everybody. It's phenomenal, and the reason that you need a guide in Nevada versus other places, Idaho, Utah,
yeah.
Colorado, Montana,
You
Wyoming,
have a trail
you can
network
get
you
a
can
trail
follow, right?
trail
Yeah,
maps. Yeah, you
yeah,
can get a trail network. You can go out, you can follow tracks, you find the parking lot,
yeah,
and it's pretty. If you have some backcountry common sense and some experience, you can unload and you can go. I went
yeah,
up to Pine, Idaho a couple years back, never been there before, and I guided a group of guys, friends of mine,
yeah,
for 5 days or for 4 days, and we'd never been there before, but it's pretty straightforward.
yeah.
Nevada, there's none of that. Like if you have to,
It's local
you have to
knowledge,
know.
basically. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
local knowledge, and even that, it's not even local
yeah,
knowledge. Like there's guys that have been riding Lamoille Canyon for 30 years who've
yeah,
never rode the Independence Range.
yeah.
That'll come and they'll contact me and be like, "Hey, Kyle," it's always, "Hey, buddy, like take me for free," but hey, share your knowledge with me. And so,
Yeah,
the cool thing about Nevada is that it is unknown.
yeah.
There aren't
It
there
is the
aren't
Wild West, right? It's a new
yeah,
adventure. It's a new
30
frontier.
yeah,
So
there's not 30,
yeah, you're
sixth
not
place
competing for tracks, right?
enclosed trailers. Yeah, you're getting up there, and the only tracks you're going to see is if I had a client the day before.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's
so, like the value we add is we take you to uncharted territory
yeah,
that we have experience in. We know what we're doing. We know how to
yeah.
get in there. We know where to unload, and we'll take you in and we'll blow your mind.
That's awesome.
Elko, I would say per capita has more advanced, intermediate to advanced snowmobilers than any other place I've ever been. Well, I'll go ride, Lamoille. There might be like some kind of like a Joe Gill ride or something like that, and
Yeah,
everybody's getting up there. And you'll go up there and you'll watch these guys, and you're like, man, everybody up here is like a pretty good dang rider.
yeah,
And a lot of our terrain is advanced. We don't have a trail system. We
yeah.
don't have meadows.
So to get access to
Everything up
these
here,
areas, like you've got to find your way
yeah,
in and out, and you probably are saving
you got to
GPS
be able
tracks, so
to
you know how to get the heck out of there, right?
Yeah, you got to be able to put your sled on its edge and hold that edge for a distance. You got to be able to tree ride sometimes.
Yeah.
Once we get into kind of our zones, there's big bowls and big chutes and lots of technical terrain, lots of pitch changes, things like that, rocks,
Sounds like
cliffs,
every sledder's
cornices.
dream, and
Yeah,
the question is are they up for the challenge? But I bet if somebody shows up and they're not up for the maximum challenge, I bet you can still let them have a fun day in some of the other terrain too, right?
yeah. Well, and like that's the kind of the nice thing is like some of the zones as we've done this after our second year of doing this and just me taking friends out over the years and stuff,
Yeah,
I've kind of learned, if somebody tells me like I'm an intermediate rider and they're booked a couple days, I'm going to take them to a zone that's a beginner zone that I can grow them into an intermediate to intermediate advanced kind
yeah,
of riding area. And so I just kind of watch, like their comfort on the sled. I start evaluating people as soon as they get on the sled at the trailer.
yeah,
Like how comfortable do they look? That's
yeah,
your first tell. Is if
yeah,
they get on the sled and they hook their tether up and they pull the rope, I go, okay, that's going to kick you up a tier. But if they're
yeah,
like, what is this thing and what's
yeah.
that? And they're telling me they've
Why do
been
I
on
have to wear a
snowmobiles their
tether,
whole life.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, that is like, I'm glad you brought that up because we do have some beginner terrain
Yeah, yeah,
and some intermediate terrain, but it all kind of flows into it. Like you kind of start out at the bunny hill
yeah.
and then you can get up to the black diamonds by the end of
Yeah,
the day.
I like to
But if
call it
you're not black
scalable. It's
diamond,
it's scalable. Like you can show up, start out
100%.
on the easy stuff, and then ramp yourself up pretty quick, right?
Yep. But like the thing for me is like, man, if I know somebody's
Yeah,
advanced, like I got a guy, he
yeah,
comes out every year from Massachusetts, spends 3 days with us. My challenge with him is making sure he doesn't get bored.
Yeah, yeah,
He comes out every year for 3 days.
yeah,
I got to go find a new zone for him. The last time he came out, Joe and I both took him out because we're both kind of friends with him now.
yeah,
We took him out and we're like, hey, man, like, Joe and I had this crazy idea to go try riding this weird zone that nobody that we know of has ever rode. Are you down? And he's like, heck yeah. Are you
yeah.
kidding me? Like, let's go, break into some new terrain. And so that was cool. But, that
Nice.
is like kind of my job as a guide, is to make sure that you're safe
Yeah,
and that you're not in too far over your head. I like to put people in over their
yeah.
head a little bit and kind of
Well, you
push
want
them
to
and kind of
push
help
them.
them
Yep.
develop their skills. Yeah, but for the most part, my job is to
Yeah,
keep you safe and make sure that I manage the terrain.
yeah.
It's so hard to manage a rider. If I can manage the terrain, I don't need to worry about the
Yeah,
rider, if
I
that
mean,
makes sense.
alive customers at the end of the day are paying customers. Let's just be honest. Like,
Yeah,
you don't want a dead
100.
customer; they're not going to pay you.
Nope. Well, and the thing is, that's a
And
good
there's
point.
other
Like,
bad side effects too.
yeah, I like return clients.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, I know you. I have a friendship with you. I know your abilities. It makes my job so much easier if I get you coming back. So my goal at the end of the day
yeah,
is to increase your riding skill, show you phenomenal time, and give you something to talk about with your friends when you get home.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Very cool. So, most of your clients, when they come out and ride with you, what's the lodging situation? Are they doing Airbnbs, lodging? Do you have a hookup somewhere down there that you put them in touch with?
yeah. So there's a local. I don't even know what you call it. It's the Hotel Lamoille. They're on Airbnb, but they also have their own booking system. It's kind of a little cabin, 3 suite cabin.
Yeah,
You can rent the whole cabin for like $300 a night. It's pretty affordable, but we kind of have a deal with them. We'll send them clients, and then they send us people if people
very
come
cool.
looking for stuff to do.
Yeah,
Um, the hotels, like, it just depends on what experience people want. If they want like the Wild West experience, I say go to Hotel Lamoille. If they want the Vegas experience, I say go book you a room at the Maverick Casino for the night.
yeah, yeah.
Um, some people Airbnb, some people come visit friends. It's kind of just all over the place.
Gotcha.
Eventually we'd like to get to where we can
Yeah.
provide our own lodging for our customers, but we're
I
just
mean,
not
my
quite there yet.
suggestion is everybody who's going that's watching this show. I mean, Joe Gill is in the comments. Just hit him up. Joe's got a air mattress that he'll let you sleep on the floor of his living room, and you can all stay there. All 10 of your buddies. You and like Joe. Thanks so much for agreeing to let everybody stay at your house. Thanks so much. Well, that's great. It's such a great
You
business model.
you joke, but the number of people that I know of that have crashed at Joe Gill's house and then rode with me the next day is more than I'd like to admit. So yeah, the Joe Gill Airbnb service is
He
is
just threw in the
top
comments. He
notch.
goes, "It's I offer up a couch." So Joe Joe offers up a
Yeah,
couch. That's
he
awesome.
does too.
That's awesome.
He does.
So I think Milo is actually legitimately interested in trying to book with you or get something too. So he dropped his phone number in the comments. Feel free to check that out later. If you
Mhm.
and Milo have any trouble getting in touch with each other over the next 24 hours, let me know. I'll be happy to put you in touch. He's a friend of mine. I've got his phone number. So
Sweet.
cool. So if people do want to do this and they want to book a trip with you, it's probably getting pretty late season now for this year. But like, let's say they're thinking about for next season.
Mhm.
How do they get a hold of you? Do you have a website? Do you have Facebook pages, Instagram? If you want to share a
Yeah.
phone number verbally, you're welcome to do any of that, or you can go in the comments later and share it too. So
Yeah, we have sledandv.com is probably the easiest way to get a hold of us. We have links to all of our social media on there. We're on Facebook,
yeah,
Instagram, TikTok, all of that. It's all just Sled and V, one word, Sled, and then NV, Nevada, not envy, like I'm jealous of you.
there you
But
go.
our we have on our website, we have the phone number you can call. We have an
Yeah,
email. We're pretty quick to respond.
yeah.
Facebook Messenger. I actually just had a lady message me today that wanted to rent a sled for tomorrow at 8 a.m. And I'm
Oh well.
like, hey, lady, like, it's Mother's Day and it's the middle of May, and so we're probably not going to be able to make that happen. But we do get back to you as quick as we can. But I'd say sledandv.com is probably the most reliable way to
Very
to
good.
get a hold of us.
Very good. Milo wants to know how large of a groups can you handle?
How many can you bring? We can.
Exactly.
I
Milo, we
mean,
all know you probably only have two friends anyway, so bring all three of you guys and you're all set.
yeah. If it's a big group, I have other guides that I bring in. Joe is this was the last year that Joe was guiding with us,
Yeah.
or this was the first year that Joe guided with us more consistently.
Yeah.
So Joe and I can usually handle a group about 8, just the two of us.
Yep.
Any more than that, I'd bring in another guide. And again, it's like I was saying, it's more terrain management. I get a lot of feedback from guys who've ridden at other places with other guides. And they're like, man, the cool thing about riding with you is like you just take us up and let us ride.
There you
Like I
go.
don't I don't try to like oh, well, you don't go right over there because I'm saving that for Saturday. I take you up and I'm like, let's just rip, dude. Like, let's have fun. Like, snowmobiling is supposed to be fun and not structured and rigid.
Yep.
Don't get hurt, but let's just go have a blast.
Yeah. And by the way, when
So,
Milo comes, he'll have an entire trailer full of AMSOIL as well because he's an AMSOIL dealer. So you guys will have plenty of
oh,
oil for the
oh,
week. So
right on. I, I
perfect.
always need oil.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much everything I think we wanted to cover tonight. Anything you want to add before we kind of do the final part of the wrap up here?
We talked a lot about safety.
Yeah.
The big thing in Elko is we don't have an avalanche forecasting center here yet. We're working on getting one here. Um, that is like the one other benefit I would say to going with a guide. I'm a Pro One guide myself, or Pro One avalanche
Yeah.
instructor myself, and so working on getting my Pro Two hopefully for next season.
Yeah.
But if you've never ridden in an area or you're unfamiliar with it, especially in an unforecasted area like Nevada,
Yeah.
it is super beneficial to be with someone that can manage terrain for
Yep.
safety reasons and keep because like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you were climbing, how many drops you did, how big an air you had, how many pow turns you did. If you don't come home to your family and friends at the end of the day, it
Amen.
just wasn't worth it.
Nope.
And so
100%.
that's probably the biggest thing I would say. If you've never ridden somewhere or if you're an inexperienced rider, get a guide that can keep you safe. Because, I mean, the number of times I popped into zones where avalanche conditions were, not great, things were unstable, and I'm watching friends of mine, climb things that I'm like, what are you doing? Like a
Yeah.
couple years ago, I run into some kids that I knew, and they were climbing right below some rocks, and the rocks were already wet sliding,
Yeah.
and they're up there, doing high marks on these, and I'm like, man, what are you doing? Do you guys have a death wish? That year we lost 2 guys in Elko,
Yeah. That's crazy.
and it is beneficial. That is a plus to Elko. Is most of the time our snow conditions are pretty stable, but every once in a while we'll get kind of thrown a wild card, and we'll have just a really bad week,
Yeah.
and that's the biggest thing for me is keeping guys safe on the mountain. And I'm not saying that you can't be safe, but why risk it?
Yep. Yep.
It's
Sounds
just not
good.
worth it.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and let me just be clear. I don't trust Joe Gill, but I'm going to give you this teaser here and see if if you take the bait. It's your choice, yay or nay. Do you want to tell the story that Joe's referring to as the Bull Run story?
I could tell that. Yeah.
All right, give us a little
I,
entertainment. Like this is the after hours. The show is done. We're wrapping this up, and this is the part where go get your bottle of your bag of popcorn and sit down because we got a good story coming. Because if Joe Gill was involved in
right.
some kind of a story, I know it was good. So Joe's the kind of guy who goes to a controlled environment like a ski resort at the end of a hill and is showing off, and then literally lets go of his sled and rolls it down into the tree at the bottom of the hill. That's the kind of guy Joe
Totally.
Gill
Yeah.
is, right? I've seen it happen a year
Yeah.
ago. So
So I will say this to everybody out there that knows of Joe from his online stuff. Side Hill Gill is a persona to an extent, but then there also is a lot of Joe Gill that bleeds into that persona that makes him just the most fun person to ride with.
oh, absolutely.
Joe's a
We
great
love you,
friend.
Joe. That's why we tease you.
Yeah, snowmobile season or not, Joe is a good friend. But like I said earlier, Joe and we both like to get into new zones that we've never ridden personally, and we don't know of anybody that's ever ridden personally. And so a couple years ago, we were looking at a map. We'll get on Google Earth or Google Maps or whatever, and we'll sit there and we'll look. Oh, well, what? Oh, this looks kind of fun over here. Let's go try this out. And this area called Bull Run, there was a zone we wanted to bust into, and it was low snow. So 3 seasons ago. So, one of the worst winters anybody's ever had. We had like 7 weeks, no snow here in Elko. And Joe and I get up there, and the road, the highway goes up, and then it hits a T, and it's a dirt road to the left and a dirt road to the right. And when I say dirt, I mean mud, right? Because it's winter, and
Yeah.
the road has mostly melted off. There's some drifts over at it here and there. And we had my truck with the sled deck on, and so we're like, heck, let's do this. And we get there early in the morning, and the road's completely frozen over. And so we get back in probably 5 or 6 miles on this muddy, dirt, drifted out road, and we find a drift, and we park on this drift. And it's later season; it's probably like early April, and
So
so it's
hard in the
warming
morning,
up,
soft in the afternoon. Yep.
hard in the morning, soft in the afternoon. And Joe and I kind of spot what we'd wanted for our access, and the whole way in, the snow was so low that we're literally looking at drift lines. We're
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
at fingers. Like, okay, which finger can we connect to get over to the place we want to get into?
yeah.
And so we parked the truck on this drift that had gone across the road that didn't seem like it was very deep. Unload the sleds. We fought for like 2 hours through quaky drainages and just gnarly drifted out, just the worst of the worst. We have a joke in Nevada that's kind of a side hill gill joke is don't go into the Quakies because we always end up going into the Quakies and you get stuck. You think you see a line, you think you see an opening in the trees, and then there's this gnarly windblown, drifted over Quakey that just ruins your whole day. And so we get up in there and we finally get up to the crest and we're looking over and it's just beautiful. The snow changes, it's all filled in. It's fresh snow, like about a foot of fresh snow on top of really good base. And I hear Joe on the radio and he goes, "Hey, Kyle, I just backed up my sled a little bit and I have green on the snow." And I was like,
Oh
"Oh,
no.
you gotta be freaking kidding me," you know? And he'd put a hole in his cooler
Threw a rock into it, I
a
bet,
couple,
going over
yeah,
all
a
the
couple,
crap. Yeah.
a couple weeks earlier.
Oh, okay.
Chainsaw, we do a thing called the chainsaw to keep
Yep,
the
yep.
sleds cool, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was chainsawing and he popped a hole in his cooler and he tried. Um, I
Bubble
don't know
gum.
if you know Kyle Franklin, but I guess he told Joe to JB weld it, and so Joe tried a JB weld fix, and it held for about 2 hours of really hard riding,
Yeah,
and then it popped. And he's got a gallon of coolant in his tunnel bag, and
yeah.
so in my head,
Of course he
I'm
does.
like processing this like the fact that he brought a gallon of coolant is not a good sign. Like that doesn't
Yeah,
show
he
a
already
lot of,
knew that something was on risk, right?
yeah. I don't have confidence in my repair if I bring a gallon of coolant when the whole system holds 3 quarts. But
Yep, yep.
so we make the call. We're like, you know what? It's not worth it. Like, I don't want to get back in there and completely run it out of coolant and then just, drag it out. Like the, the ride in was not a drag out ride out. It would have
Yeah.
been like, we're coming back with a side by side and getting this thing. And so we turn around and we head back out. We get to the truck, we load up, and the truck was stuck. And just like completely like just spinning all the tires, not going anywhere. The snow had
Stuck on the
slushed up. It's
axles,
probably,
basically, yeah.
yeah. Well, it wasn't quite that. It was just that it was slush on top of ice.
Oh,
And
gotcha.
so there's just zero traction. And so Joe, in typical side hill fashion, he goes over and he starts collecting rocks and packing rocks. And we get this trail packed of rocks. And then we drive forward a foot and pack the snow and then back up and forward a foot and back up. And it probably took us 45 minutes to get unstuck. And
Yeah.
we get unstuck and we get back on the road and the top of this hill is dry, right where the drift ended. But then it was a mud run the whole way out. So I'm in third gear in my Cummins, just
Hammer down.
yeeting,
Yeah.
just hammer down, completely just getting after it. And it was scary because there was a couple of the corners that, like here we have clay,
Yeah.
so it's this real
Super
slick
slick. Yeah.
clay,
Super slick.
super slick, super just soupy, gross. And there's a couple of these corners that it's like if you get off the road,
You're
you're
done.
down, 40 feet into a drainage that you're
Yeah.
just going to be screwed. But I'm scared of
To
letting
slow
off the
down.
throttle because if I lose any momentum, we're going to be there until it dries out in the summertime.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Joe and we end up getting all the way back to the main road. And it was one of those butt puckering moments. And Joe, he's filming the whole thing. And we get back to where kind of the intersection was, get back on pavement. And he does his little side hill gill, like, this was a side hill gill adventure thing. And then he gets home that night. And I wanted to see the photo of the drive out in the truck because that was crazier than anything we'd done in the snowmobile.
Yeah.
And Joe gets home and he goes, the file was corrupted on my camera, Kyle. And I'm just
Ah.
like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
So
Like,
it didn't happen.
I mean, it never happened. We got a couple pictures of sleds and truck just completely just covered in giant chunks of clay. But,
Yep, yep.
that was one of the many side hill gill adventures that I've been on in my life.
Oh, yeah.
We went on one a couple weeks back that it started looking like it was going to be the same thing. We had a client with us and I'm like, hey Joe, like let's not go full side hill gill adventure on this one. Like let's back this off. Let's call an audible and go somewhere that we know. But
Yeah.
no, that's Joe and I like to have fun, and part of the fun is getting stuck, blowing up sleds, hauling sleds out.
Yep.
I think I told you earlier when we were kind of talking, we had a kid. This kid's he's like third ride ever on a sled, friend of Joe's, and we take him out and he ghost rode his sled. I climbed a hill, really technical line. I get like 20 feet from the top. I wheelie the sled over on top of myself and pin myself up against a tree. So I'm standing up, stuck between the sled and the tree, but the hill's so steep that I don't want to roll it off of me. So Joe, who's filming from the top, he comes over. We build this 60-foot long bench so that we can back the sled up, turn the sled around, and I can come down the way I came. While we're doing this kid, and I know his brother really good. I ride with his brother all the time, who's been riding for a couple of years now, and
Yeah.
he's a ripper and it kind of insane. But we hear this sled come roaring up off to the side, and we hear it turn out, and then we hear it go roaring down the hill. And I'm like, oh, I like this kid. He's crazy just like his brother. And I look down and I see the sled is completely riderless, airborne, 150 feet through the air, and it hits a Volkswagen bus sized rock just completely.
It
I mean,
destroys it. Yeah.
it took the bumper on his skidoo and just made the bumper flat.
Oh my gosh.
Is how hard it hit.
Yeah.
It pushes all his A arms, pushes his Y pipe up. So Joe and I tie up to him. And I think it was 9 hours
Wow.
with two sleds dragging
Going up.
this thing. We'd drag it 100 feet and then have to stop, and drag it 100 feet and have to stop.
Yep.
And we get to this spot where we have to climb up an avalanche chute to get out of there. And I think that took us 6 or 7 different tries where we're bing bonging into each other the whole way up. And we finally get to the top, and there was a little section where you ride across these little rocks, just like kind of a wind blown area.
Yeah.
And as soon as we hit that, his A arms give up and his skis tip out. So then we're like, you got to be kidding me. Like, we were home free after this. And we got back after dark to the truck, and the kid he's stuck in his truck in a drift with a trailer on. And we're on the other side of the drift on the road. So then we have to get him unstuck. Then Joe gets stuck. And it was like 3 hours of getting unstuck just to go riding for the
Get
day.
home at
But
2 a.m., huh?
yeah, I think it was like 11 o'clock. It was 11 o'clock at night. We like roll in and we're like, man, that was
very nice.
An adventure. But
that's backcountry sledding.
That's
It's always
not
an
what
adventure.
yeah. And that's, if you want that, go to the Slide Hill Gill page on our website and you can book an exclusive Slide Hill Gill adventure, but that's not a normal offering.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's wrap this up with some gratitude. So, who do you want to say thank you to? Any shout outs you want to give to anybody that you want to support? So whatever you want to do, and then we'll wrap it up. So,
absolutely. I think the first guy I think of is like DJ Osborne.
Nice.
If you guys don't know DJ,
DJ
DJ's
well.
been he's kind of been like a mentor to me. DJ and I did our Pro One together. We started our businesses around the same time, and I remember meeting DJ at the snow show a couple years ago, and I went up to him and I was like, man, I've been watching what you're doing. I just appreciate it. And he's like, I've been watching what you're doing. Like, you're awesome. Like, and so I was like, me, like, I'm not doing anything, and DJ's been a real good mentor. He's kind of helped me along the way, kind of redirect kind of my mindset of what the business is capable of. So DJ, I really appreciate you. Dean and Todd at MVM, those guys, they made me a dealer and supported me right from the very beginning. Duncan Lee, Duncan's a great friend of mine.
Got a great support system. Lots of good names.
Yeah. Duncan, he with Sierra Avalanche Center, he came out the first year we ever did an avalanche course in Elko. Duncan came out through Sled and V and gave the first avalanche course that was ever taken place in Elko, motorized anyways. And then Al Richards from Backcountry Institute. Al and I have become friends. That's what I did my Pro One through, was Backcountry Institute in Utah. And Al is kind of, Duncan got too busy with everything that he's got going on to be able to come out as regular. So Al's kind of filled in. Really appreciative of him. Trevor Hansen from Penn, another supportive business. I think Arctic Cat, for making great sleds that we put clients on through all the years.
Nice.
Evolution Power Sports here in town, the local Skidoo dealer. Even though I wasn't on a Skidoo branded sled, they've always been super supportive of me. The late Bob DeMars is a good friend of mine. He actually died a couple weeks ago, but
sorry to hear that.
His son and his wife, they still continue to support us. And then just the Elko community as a whole for just getting behind, Sled and V. I got, my good friend Charlie Walker, Joe Gill. Joe Gill was the one that, he kind of showed me the ropes, Elko, a little bit, and how to manage it when I first moved here. And I owe a lot to Joe. But just all my good friends, my family, supportive, family is important. If they can't get behind you with snowmobiling, you probably shouldn't be with them, because it's going to be hard. I think a snowmobiler's wife has it harder than a hunter's wife, because hunting season's only a couple of weeks, and then it's over. Whereas sled season can be 6 months.
Nice.
But that's some of the people that I think have really shown up for me and kind of helped me along the way. So
Very good, very good. Well, thank you, Kyle. Thanks for showcasing Sled NV and everything you're doing down there. It sounds like an awesome thing, and I think I still to this moment, we started the show out with this idea of like, can you even ride snowmobiles in Nevada? And as we've learned about it, it's definitely one of the quote unquote last frontiers of snowmobiling in the lower 48, right? I mean, to get something probably more remote, you almost have to go to Alaska probably to be able to ride, the type of terrain you guys are at, as far as the remoteness and the lack of tracks,
right.
that kind of thing, right? And
Well, and
so
that reminds me, the U.S. Forest Service. That's the last
there,
person I want to thank. And
yeah,
Wendy
that's awesome.
Markham, Josh Nichols at the Forest Service, super supportive of us and everything we're doing. I appreciate those guys so much.
Yeah,
They really want this in Nevada,
yeah,
and it's needed because there's so much terrain that people don't even know about. They're scared to go break into somewhere new,
yeah, yeah,
and that's where we come in. We make sure that you can go ride completely uncharted, untracked terrain
yeah.
almost every single ride
Well, if
safely.
you're
So
a risk taker in Nevada, you can either go snowmobiling or you can go gambling. I'd prefer snowmobiling, so
right,
I'm in on the
I
snowmobiling.
agree.
So
It might end up costing you more in the end, but man, you're going to have a
yeah, but
lot
at least
more
you're
fun
getting
doing
something
it.
out of
Right?
it instead of just screwing
Exactly,
your money away,
exactly,
right?
exactly, 100%.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I wrap up every show the same way, and I tell everybody thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing the show. Again, reminder: if you share the show out, you can get in to win that backcountry first aid kit. And I tell everybody, God bless you, and live large, live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others, just like Kyle's doing. Appreciate you all. Hang in there. Bye.